Well, boys, we got the 2JZ mounted in the 280Z last video. It's time to get it running, so let's get started. What's going on, guys? We got to get working on this 2JZ swap. It's time to get it running. So we've got the 2JZ in last video. It's all mounted up on the Apex suspension and cross member and everything, sitting on BC coilovers. So that is all good to go. The car is sitting on its own weight now. No rotisserie, no jack stands, no quick jacks. It is fully on its own weight. The suspension is ready to go. The 2JZ is mounted. We got the transmission mount in that we made up, I don't know, a couple months ago, something like that. So I guess it's finally time to get this thing running. I have a couple of bins worth of parts here that I got with the 2JZ. I did not take any of this apart. So it's going to be a bit of a process figuring out where everything goes. I've never worked on a 2JZ. I mean, it's a Toyota. I'm sure it's fine and easy to work on. But we got to start getting this laid out. We got to start ordering parts. And part of that is starting to assemble what we have. Also got a bin worth of stuff from the 280Z engine bay that we took out, because there's going to be some stuff in there that we need to stick in here. Namely, the brake booster is going to have to go back in because that takes up a lot of space. Obviously, we don't want to start building around that. One of the big things we're going to have to do is figure out what we want to do for an intake manifold. The stock intake manifold, I'll set it on here for you guys for visualization, but on an NA 2JZ GE, the intake manifold actually comes up and over the valve covers, and we don't want that. We're going to have just a normal GTE style intake manifold that comes forward with the throttle body up here somewhere, because that's what we're eventually going to need for when we turbo the car. And also, that stock intake manifold doesn't look good sitting up over the engine like that. Now, if you're paying attention, you might notice the car does not look exactly like it did in the last video. I took a day-ish last weekend and did some quick spray painting. I was sick of how this thing looked just sitting out here. Gray primer on everything, all the repairs that we've done, all the rust repair down the side of the car. It was just sitting there with gray primer. Looked terrible. I wanted something that made me a little bit happier to see when I walked in here. So I grabbed some cheap spray paint. I did zero prep other than wiping it down real quick, and I didn't really even wipe it down fully, to be honest. And then we just sprayed everything down. Sprayed the valve covers down because those were gross, and sprayed the entire car. I had to tape everything off because we didn't want to get any overspray on that nice finished bottom of the car that we are all done with. I don't want to have to do anything with that, or the Apex suspension. So I took a little bit of time. I took the glass out of the hatch, and I also, it's hard to see right now, but the taillight panel was color matched to the car when I got it. When the previous owner, whoever did it, repainted the car, they color matched the taillight panel, which I do not like the look of, so I threw some gloss black on there real quick. Just makes me a little happier to come out here and see a car in one color like this instead of just all covered in primer. Obviously, it is not anywhere near what it should be. I didn't even have it hot enough out here, to be honest. The paint didn't even cure good. It ran quite a bit just because it was too cold. So, plus no prep at all, like I said. I mean, you can see everywhere on here where, like right here, I ground the paint down and filled some holes in from the stock mirrors that we're not going to be using. You can see those edges all around the car. The roof obviously right here. So, again, it's just real quick just because I wanted something to be a little better visually when I come out and look at the car. By the way, there's a couple reasons why I'm not actually going forward with painting the whole car now before we do all this, because we're going to have to take all of the 2JZ and everything we do for the work on the car now all back out to paint the car, because it's getting fully painted. The engine bay is going to get painted, obviously the interior and everything. So that's more work, right? But I have a couple reasons for that. So one, I don't want to have to worry about scratching the car while I'm doing this. I know I got more fabrication work to do. We're going to have to build intake, piping, exhaust, all that stuff up here. Anything in the engine bay that has to do with the 2JZ is going to need is going to be a bunch of work. And if I don't paint it now, I don't have to worry about scratching it. The big reason, though, is It's the middle of winter here in Maine. It is freezing out, and you know, my garage, uninsulated. All I have for heat out here is the wood stove, which does a good job. However, I don't keep it hot out here when I'm not out here, so every morning I come out on the weekends, it's, you know, 10, 20, maybe 30 degrees in here, and it takes a while to get warmed up. It takes even longer for the car to get warmed up. And if I was to try and paint the whole car when we're ready, when it's this cold out, I don't think I would end up doing a good job, because I would have very short days of, once I got it hot enough in here, when I'd be able to paint the car, because you can't paint when it's too cold. That's part of why our spray paint on the car that we don't really care about didn't come out very good, because it was too cold. So I'd end up rushing. I wouldn't do a good job, I believe anyway, just because I'd have such a short day, and you know, all the setup and prep and everything. I would rather do it during the summer, so I'm not going to just leave the car sitting here with nothing getting accomplished. So we're going to move forward with this, and it also allows for any further fabrication that needs to happen on the car that I don't know about right now, because you never know what we could run into building this car. So my plan is to fully build the car, fully get it ready, fully get it running, and actually drive it. And once I know that I'm happy with it, blow the car back apart, do all the body work, paint, all that stuff. I might do a little bit of, you know, sanding and Bondo work and stuff on the paint, because I don't necessarily have to worry about finishing it and having it hot out here and everything for the car to get a finished paint job on it during the middle of winter. But anyways, I've probably rambled enough. We need to get on figuring out what we have in here for parts, get them on the 2JZ, and move forward with the actual swap. Well, here's all our parts we got. We got a bunch of stuff here we are not going to use. I don't need the air box or anything, although we will need the MAF. Power steering pump I'm not going to need, because we have a manual rack, at least for now, on the 280Z. These came with manual steering, for anybody that doesn't know. So obviously we have a manual rack on there, nowhere to connect power steering lines to. There are conversions that can be done, people like a Subaru rack. I believe there's a couple different options people have done. For now, I'm going to run the manual rack, see how I like it. Probably, I mean, most likely, I'll be upgrading the rack at some point to a power steering rack. We have the power steering pump here. I probably will throw it on for now. I believe we're going to need a delete for the belt routing, so we keep a pulley there. We'll see. We got an alternator here. We got 4 different starters, so I'll pick one of those and throw on there. You know, this is all old, gross stuff, but that's fine for now. It's fine to have it like this just to get it running. Everything, just like the car, is going to get pulled back apart. You can see I haven't cleaned up the block or anything at all. I just did the valve covers like we mentioned before, just for fun, just because I wanted it done. But everything will get pulled back apart and cleaned before we're done. We got motor mounts here for, because this came out of a Lexus GS300. Don't need those, obviously. Got an ignition here. And what I've been told is if you're using the stock ECU, you have to run the stock ignition switch because of the security in it. You know, I wouldn't be able to splice, at least as is, the ignition switch from the Datsun steering column into the wiring for this harness. What I have seen is if you're going to run the stock harness like I am for now, you can get an Aristo, Toyota Aristo ECU, which does not have that security in it and allows you to run whatever key you want. You just got to wire it up to the harness. So I might go that way. Those are pretty cheap. You know, starters are pretty gross, but again, we'll clean all this stuff up or get a reman one or something at some point. Intake manifold, I mentioned we're not going to be running because it goes up over the engine bay. I didn't realize that, so this must go So this goes on here. I might mock this up on there just to look at it. And it would honestly actually help me with getting the wiring harness in place. But this huge throttle body is probably not going to work. We'll see. And I'm surprised. I thought these were drive-by-wire, but this one's actually drive-by-cable. So that is helpful. I don't have to worry about trying to do anything with a drive-by-wire to convert to drive-by-cable by the looks. We got a couple things here. I'm not sure 100% what this is, but I googled the part number, and it says it's an air fuel module for a Toyota Sequoia and Tundra, I think. So I don't know why that's in there. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's necessary for this, and this is a different part number that's the same thing, because this one doesn't have a part number on it. But we got the engine harness here, so that needs to go on. But let's start with doing a couple easy things. Let's throw the starter on, let's throw the alternator on, and the power steering pump. Gotta clean them all up though, because they are pretty gross. There we go. Cleaned up enough to at least get them in the car. They're still, you know, not very good looking, but again, does not matter right now. Let's start throwing them in the car though. So I apparently don't have my starter bolts. And we got a whole bunch of bolts in here, but I've looked around and they are not in there, which I kind of figured we'd run into this stuff. I'll pick up some bolts. I'm sure we're gonna run into it in the future with more stuff, so that's why it's a good thing to just get everything together right now that we can. All right, well, we're gonna give up with mounting the power steering pump. I don't have all of the parts. There's another bracket. It actually bolts to the AC pump, which I don't have. And if we throw this in there, it goes way up here, somewhere right around there. And that's gonna be in the way, I believe that's gonna be in the way of the intake manifold, where we wanna put that going forward, and the throttle body. So there's no point in putting it in there to mock up anyway. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna throw that intake manifold on that we are not using. Just gonna throw everything on real quick, finger tight. And then that'll help us get the wiring harness on. Just help us line everything up a bit. And then I'll probably pull it back off because we don't need it. But yeah, let's do that real quick. Just for fun, right? Well, apparently you can't slide this on now. You gotta do it on this piece, so let's take that back off. All right, well, actually it looks like this is not cable driven. If I pull this down here, I don't know if you guys can see inside, probably can't, but that the throttle plate does not even come close to opening. So I think this is drive-by-wire. I'm not sure what this would be for though, maybe no. Wouldn't make any sense, huh? I don't know. I'll do some research and figure out why it has a cable on here too. There we go, got that mess all on there. As you can see, it is not the prettiest looking intake setup. That is why we will be getting an aftermarket intake that is basically a log style that just goes over here. All the runners just run into a plenum right here. with the throttle body being right about here somewhere. Much better looking. It's more similar to the stock GTE intake manifold because that one is turbo. They run obviously from the turbo on this side through the intercooler up over to here to the intake manifold. So that is what we're going to need anyway eventually. So we're going to pick up one of those again, just for mock-up, just for fun. But yeah, that's kind of a mess of a setup. But if anybody knows why we have a cable on here, again, I'm not familiar with these motors. I've never driven a Lexus GS300, which is what this came out of. Never worked on one. I'm not sure what that is actually for, but these gotta be drive-by-wire because, like I said, that does not open that fully. Maybe it's just an I don't know. I'm not sure why Toyota would put that on. I'll figure it out. I'll do research anyway. But you guys let me know. I'm sure some of you know more about Toyota stuff than I do. All right, well, I've been messing around with this for a while. I actually got the harness most of the way in now. I had to take off the upper intake because it actually runs underneath there. Couldn't get it in there, obviously. But that's not a big deal. I'm sure we'll be taking this apart a ton. Got the ECU hooked up. For some reason, I have open ports here. I don't know what's up with that. So I'm going to do some research there. We got the intake just stuck on here so we could connect the map and all that stuff. Obviously that's not staying like that and none of this is getting used, but I wanted to just see where the harness went. We got a bunch of connectors that we don't have anything to connect them to, like all this stuff down here because this goes to the AC and the power steering, which we don't have. I got a bunch of stuff over here. I'm assuming this must go to like the O2 sensors, but I'm not 100% on that. We'll figure it all out eventually, but I want to see real quick whether my brake booster fits in there with that intake on there. We're going to try that out real quick because we got to throw all this stuff on anyway to make sure everything fits and works, and we're going to be running the car anyway. So I got the brake booster out here. It's pretty crusty, but I think it's still good. So we're going to throw it in there real quick and probably throw the pedals in too, because the pedals are actually what holds, you know, the firewall gets sandwiched between the brake booster and the pedal bracket. So we'll throw all that stuff on right now, make sure it fits. Oh yeah, plenty of room for that in there with that intake. There we go, so tons of room in there. Looks like we got plenty of room for our brake master here. I will not be reusing that crusty old one over there because I don't want to risk it. We're going to get a new brake master. Same thing with the clutch master. I need a bigger clutch master to go with that CD09 Slave. So we won't worry about that right now. Let's, for the heck of it, throw the steering column in just to see how good that fits, which it should be fine. Obviously the Apex mounts are made to go around the stock steering shaft, so let's throw that in. There, we won't be running this steering wheel, but might as well stick it on just for appearances right now and so I can easily steer the car. I mean, it's been over a year since the car has been able to steer itself, so that's kind of funny. But anyways, I'm about done with this for today. We got the 2JZ in, buttoned up as far as the harness as much as I can, through the intake manifold on right. Now, I am not happy with that at all. It's so ugly. I don't want to run that. I know I will not be happy with this, running it as it is. I mean, it's just, it doesn't look good. And I'm not going to be happy with spending all this time on this car and even running this temporarily. So, my plan, like I had mentioned before, is running a forward-facing intake manifold with the throttle body up here. That we're going to need anyway when we turbo it. So, I was planning on picking one up now. However, I've done some research and it's not that simple. This stock ECU is not tunable and it gets very unhappy if you don't have all the sensors hooked up. What I have found for research is because this has a weird drive-by wire, but technically it still has a cable throttle body, it's not easy to eliminate that from the stock ECU. I swear I've seen somebody that did it before, but I don't even remember. Maybe it was just somebody trying something out. I don't remember now at this point. But it's not as simple as just putting a different throttle body on here and the car will work. Obviously, I could physically make that. I can physically bolt the intake manifold and the aftermarket throttle body on there. But the stock ECU won't like it. It'll go into limp mode. And I got some other issues with the harness. I've got some connectors that are broken, like this one here. I'm not sure what that's for just yet, but that wire's broken there. One of the connectors for the coil pack is broken inside, so the pins are just sitting in there. And other than that, that's a 20-year-old harness. I don't know what's going on over here, why I don't have all of the connectors plugged in. I'm wondering maybe that's body control stuff. You know, lights and whatever else that would have been on the Lexus. That's possible, but then where do these plugs go? So, I don't know. This could be made to work. I wouldn't be happy with it, though. So, I'm going to do some research. Maybe, because we're going to need a standalone ECU anyway when we go to turbo it. So, maybe I just do that now. Maybe I just bite the bullet now, buy a standalone ECU. I'm thinking maybe a ECU Masters EMU Black. You've also got Link ECU and a bunch of other different stuff, Haltech. Grab an aftermarket wiring harness like Wiring Specialties or whoever else makes them and just do it now. Just get that part done. I don't need to turbo it now, but we could run that stuff now, get the car running still, and we're not spending any extra money because I was going to need to spend that money anyway down the road when we turbo it. So maybe that's the plan because this is not doing it for me. It's not doing it. And, you know, I'd have to do all this extra work getting this to work. You know, I mentioned before the immobilizer. That thing will not start without this immobilizer, ignition wired up, all of this stuff here, which would have had to have been cut off. See, we got a bunch of cut wires there, which, I could make work. I could make work, but it's temporary because it's not going to stay that way once we go with a standalone ECU. So, I don't know. I said maybe you just spend the money now and do the standalone ECU with an aftermarket harness and be done with it. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to do some research, see exactly what we should do. Remember, I'm trying to keep this on as much of a budget as I can. I've already spent way more on the car than I wanted to, period. But that's kind of what happens when you get into a project like this. Scope creep is a real thing. I don't know. I got a lot of thinking to do, a lot of research. I would like to know what you guys think, though. Would you stick with this just to get the car running as is? Do all the work with the ECU to make it work in the Datsun, which, again, can be done. But then it's all, I wouldn't say useless work, but it's all work that's going to go away once it gets turboed and standalone ECU anyway down the road. We'll just be one step ahead if I just go with the standalone ECU now. And I don't even know how I'd get, I'd have to get gauges to work somehow because all the gauges are mechanical in this car. I believe anyway. It's been a while since I looked. I know the speedo's mechanical. So I'm going to have to do aftermarket gauges anyway. But again, I'd have to get them to work with this. I don't know how easy that is. I haven't got that far yet. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna end this one off here. Got a lot of research to do. I don't know what the next video is gonna look like. Maybe we go back. We got a little bit of rust to do that I just found. When I painted this here, I briefly cleaned this up, and we got some spots that are thinner than I thought. Real easy to fix. The hatch needs some work. I got some plans here to get rid of that flex. I don't know. We'll see what happens next. I honestly have no idea. But come back for the next video, and you will see just along with me. Hopefully I see you guys then.